podcast of innovations in education for a big, bold future. Today, ahead of Kentucky Gives Day tomorrow, we're going to talk with a group of panelists who are leading nonprofits across Kentucky. Kentucky nonprofits are indeed much more than charity. In fact, 1 in 10 Kentuckians work for a nonprofit. Nonprofits are Kentucky's 4th largest employer sector in our state, and 75% of nonprofits in Kentucky have budgets under $500,000 a year. So folks in our nonprofits are doing the work at the ground level to really make a difference in the lives of families, individuals, and communities. And I'm pleased to have with me today to talk about their work, Mike Norman, the CEO of the Kentucky Science Center. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Neil Chethik, Executive Director of the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you for having me, Bridget.
Timothy Johnson, President and CEO of United Way of the Bluegrass here in Lexington. Welcome, Timothy.
Thank you, Bridget. Glad to be here.
And Kathy Mullen, Director of Education for Visually Impaired Preschool Services. Hello, Kathy.
Hi there. Thanks for having us today.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And again, we have Marva Johnson here with us interpreting our conversation for the hard of hearing. And we're always happy to have Marva. So just a little bit of background before we get started. The Kentucky Nonprofit Network here in Lexington, Danielle Clore is the president and CEO, partnered with Grant Makers of Kentucky to survey Kentucky's nonprofits to learn more about the impact of COVID-19. This report analyzes results gathered from 582 nonprofit organizations across Kentucky and Southern Indiana as of April 22nd, 2020. In the report, the findings include 50% of the 582 responding organizations have less than 3 months cash reserves. 51% of responding organizations are reducing program services offered and the number of clients served due to COVID-19, negatively impacting close to 500,000 Kentuckians so far. In order to address financial issues, 26% of responding nonprofits are laying off or furloughing staff members. 28% are reducing staff pay and or hours, and 71% have received or are applying for a federal loan called the Paycheck Protection Program. 72% are seeking emergency funding from current funders and donors, and 53% are seeking emergency funding from prospective funders and donors. So we know that there's a great deal of uncertainty because of COVID, and nonprofits are really having to figure out how to serve the needs of families and individuals today with a lot of uncertainty in their own budgets. We also know each of you are figuring out creative ways to do that with fewer resources to ensure that you're able to meet your mission. And we want a big part of our conversation to be about that creativity, those innovations today. Tomorrow is Kentucky Gives Day, and citizens across the state will be asked to contribute to nonprofits like yours and many others. And we want them to hear loud and clear the innovative, creative, critically important work that each one of you are doing to help serve our Commonwealth and help us achieve the big, bold future that is so important to each of us. So with that, I'd like to just have a conversation first about what each of you are doing in your respective areas of work. And Mike, I'd like to start with you at the Kentucky Science Center in Louisville, Kentucky. Share with us the work of the Kentucky Science Center, how you impact the lives of individuals and families all across the state.
Sure, glad to. Thank you for the opportunity. To start out, we are the State Science Center of Kentucky. We were named that in the early 2000s. So we are the largest hands-on interactive science center in the state. We impact all 120 counties last year. So we're very proud of that. We served about 325,000 people, both at our flagship facility in downtown Louisville, as well as throughout the Commonwealth. So we go wherever folks are and try to deliver science content to them. Our goal is to create that, to stimulate the curiosity and the desire to learn. It creates lifelong learners. So we don't pretend to be the science experts in every content, but we're all about stimulating curiosity and fun and entertaining ways that help you to really learn for your whole life. So it's, we've been shut down since early March. So our, not only at our flagship facility, but because we do so much programming in schools and libraries, all of that access has also been shut down. So we have pivoted quickly to virtual. And, I'm sure we could talk more about that in a few minutes, but virtual is where so many of us are living right now and getting content out that way.
Excellent, Mike. Thank you. And I think about the tag, one of the taglines that I know from the Kentucky Science Center, very simple: do science.
Do science, absolutely.
And that idea of instilling that love of learning is grounded in our, I think, shared philosophy of the power of learning. So it's always exciting to be at the Kentucky Science Center and feel that energy.
It is. I miss it terribly. So I'm anxious to get back open. So
yes, indeed. Now, I'll just remind folks listening that we are happy to take your questions via the comment section on our Facebook page, and we'll ask those questions as they come in of our panelists. So Neil, how about the Carnegie Center? Based in Lexington, but you draw people from across the state to the Carnegie Center. Share with us your work.
Yes, well, we do both very local and statewide. The purpose of our work is literacy, basic literacy, all the way to artistic literacy. We have programs that start with books for babies, where we literally hand books to the families as their babies are leaving the hospital so that they have a chance to begin the literacy work that has to be done. And we go all the way to the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. The Kentucky Writers, Wendell Berry, Bell Hooks, long lists of incredible writers in our state. And so we honor them at the high end of our work. But what I'm mostly concerned about right now in this period is the educational crisis we're about to hit, if we haven't already hit it, knowing that in 2 or 3 months, many of the lower income, particularly lower income families where their children have not been able to Zoom as often or have the resources and the support to get the education over the last 3 months. Now they'll have most of a summer to forget what they learned. And we're going to see a lot of children who are in first or second or third grade who have first grade reading skills. And so our job will be to step in at that moment and say, we can't wait a year or 2 years to catch these people up. This is a crisis, an emergency right now. So while I think so most of our work is with children anyway, but we're now going to be intensifying that work. And we had been doing a lot of tutoring one-on-one, small group classes where kids can get extra attention. That has moved virtual as well. But as you can imagine, teaching a child to read over the internet is going to be challenging. So there's going to be a lot of very interesting literacy work over the next year that we hope to be involved with and leading in the Lexington area at least.
Community-based organizations will be so critically important for helping stem the tide of the learning loss that's happening during COVID. And part of that, Neil, I'm thinking about the dyslexia camp that you host each summer. So will you still be able to host that this summer?
No, we will not. We had hoped to June for about 8 or 10 days. We have done it in the past, and children who have dyslexia with this particular program that we more house than anything often gain 2, 3, or 4 years in a couple of weeks of daily 4 to 5 hour intensive sessions. And that has been really successful for the past 10 years or so. But this year, without the space, it can't really be done over the internet. So we're having to let that go.
But you're clearly,
it's a tough time.
Yeah, how you jump in there and help support our learners so there isn't any more learning loss than absolutely necessary. Timothy, the United Ways across the state of Kentucky, there are, my last count, 22. And the United Way, the Bluegrass, is one of the largest ones in the state. The United Ways are doing incredible work around community impact, everything from education, income, and health. and you're at the center of that in Lexington. So share with us your focus in Lexington. You've also been here for just under or about a year.
8 months as of last week.
8 months. So you
Believe it or
picked a
not.
great time.
But it seems like a year plus because of obviously things that have been going on. So again, thanks for the opportunity, Bridget, to be here today. Again, Timothy Johnson, the new president and CEO of United Way of the Bluegrass. I have the pleasure of leading a 99-year-old regional philanthropic organization that's charged with delivering impact across the 9 counties of Central Kentucky. Our mission is to fight for the basic needs, the education and financial stability of every person across Central Kentucky. And as I mentioned, even though I've only been in the Commonwealth and in this role for 8 months, I've been a nonprofit do-gooder for a little while and really been dedicated to helping to eliminate the root causes of poverty and improving conditions in communities to help families and individuals with the proper tool achieve their full potential and thrive. Things have been immensely challenging for the nonprofit community. And as an organization that we really sit in the midst of our nonprofit partners and really help support them, not only through finances, but through capacity building, relationships, volunteerism, advocacy. It has really stopped the way that we do our work, and it forced us and the nonprofit community to really reinvent and rethink how we do our work. You know, with so many nonprofit organizations who have had to shutter their doors since the start of this pandemic, so many organizations have had and really they're no longer maybe delivering the types of services that they normally would, but have had to change to make sure that they're delivering things like access to food and prescriptions and basic needs and formula in order to be responsive to the community needs. We know now that there's a greater need than ever with people who have been, let go of their jobs, in some cases, wages reduced, folks who are typically and traditionally not really using the nonprofit social service network are now finding themselves accessing that. So you have a greater need with fewer organizations to deliver that need and to really meet that need. So it's been a really challenging time.
Yeah.
So United Way, and we've partnered with other members of the philanthropic community, such as the Bluegrass Community Foundation. We've done our part to partner together to try to provide resources, but there's only but so much, the philanthropic organizations of the Bluegrass can do. We're going to really take really reinventing the way nonprofits do their work, and really a commitment from our donors, our stakeholders, those who have supported nonprofit organizations generally, to not forget about nonprofits and the role that we play critically in the response, the recovery, and the restoration of Kentucky throughout this pandemic.
Absolutely. And Timothy, I know one of the things you came here to Kentucky and to the United Way of the Bluegrass to do was to develop and open opportunity centers for folks.
Absolutely.
So seems like those centers are more important than ever, but they have to be thinking differently now. Absolutely.
And it's challenging to now resource the resources to actually make those centers a reality. So as you mentioned, prior to the pandemic, our organization was in the midst of a transformation, really one to becoming a modern day United Way and becoming the community's philanthropic partner of choice. We were going to kick off a new program model, as you mentioned, we've named them waypoints, but essentially there's a one-stop shops that we are going to embed in key communities that the data has told us that has the greatest needs, that will have the most impact on our students being able to arrive to school prepared to not only learn, but also to thrive, providing all kinds of services from workforce development, job readiness, financial stability services, how to have a good relationship with money, mental health, substance use issues, you name it. But we've had to now push our timeline for doing that, because right now, even though these services would play a critical role now more than ever, we found that this is really not the time that a lot of donors and companies are entertaining sort of a new programmatic thrust. Right now, they are looking at how can I hold on to my employees? Employees are thinking, how can I hold on to my dollars? Because one, I really don't know when the end of this is, even though government and businesses are starting to reopen. We really don't know when the end of this will happen and if there's going to be a resurgence. So although in some areas, the community has been immensely philanthropic and giving, there's a certain conservative sort of look at giving out dollars right now. So we've had to push that timeline. We're still going to do it because we know it's critical, but it causes us to rethink. Also, our model of having people come into a center is obviously not one that we can use right now. Things have changed so much over the 8 months that I've been here. but we're up to the task of really helping to put our heads together with others and sort of rethink and do some ideation around how to do this in a way that the community can get the services they need, but also stay safe.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we're so glad you're here, Timothy, with us in Kentucky during this pandemic, leading the conversation in Lexington. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Kathy, visually impaired preschool services.
Yes.
So you've had to, I'm thinking, respond to kind of non-traditional instruction in some way for preschoolers.
Yes.
Share with us your work. I guess before we
Sure.
go to the what have you been doing through the crisis, share with
Right.
us the work of visually impaired preschool services.
Certainly. Well, visually impaired preschool services has been around now for 35 years. It started in Kentucky in Louisville in a partnership with the American Printing House and the School for the Blind with a Metro United Way a grant of $10,000 and Crusade for Children for another 10. And 8 children were identified who needed services in the Louisville area. Since that time, 35 years ago, we have expanded to be serving statewide, the entire Commonwealth of Kentucky, as well as the entire state of Indiana. Last year, we served 603 families and children across the 2 states. In Kentucky, we serve birth to 5-year-olds, and in Indiana, we serve birth to 3-year-olds. The Indiana School for the Blind and Visually Impaired has a preschool program, so there's not the need that we have here in Kentucky. In Kentucky, if you have a child who's born blind or visually impaired or diagnosed in early years with a visual impairment, the family calls the School for the Blind, and then the School for the Blind will refer that child to visually impaired preschool services, to VIPS. We are well on our way of surpassing 725,000 for the current fiscal year. We were at close to that number. I keep saying 725 as we shuttered for the pandemic. But we had been our services are provided in the home and community through early intervention with Kentucky and Indiana First Steps programs. Research has been showing in recent years, the past 10 years or so, that virtual home visits or remote visits with young families who are tech savvy are very, very beneficial, because the coaching model that is used in early intervention is supposed to be implemented by the professional coaching the parent, who is then coaching the child. But still, in the traditional format of having a professional go into the home, the parents remain a little hands-off and want the professional to do a laying on of the hands and help them with their child. But when a virtual visit is taking place, it's the parent who's doing the work, and they feel so much more empowered at the end of the day. There have been some kinks in the system. It's very hard to work with a family remotely for 60 minutes. The state of Indiana's First Steps program has changed their 60-minute visits to 2 30-minute visits a week, which is working a whole lot better. We're not doing that yet in Kentucky, so we're still restricted. We in Kentucky had to make the purchase of the Zoom Business for HIPAA compliance, which was quite pricey. We readjusted some grant money that we had already received and had earmarked for materials to buy that. And then later learned that actually Medicaid in Kentucky said we could use any format that was needed as long as we could deliver the model. So we've had a couple of kinks in our armor with that, but we are hearing very strong reviews from our families. 62% of our families have agreed to participate in the virtual visits. The other ones were mailing learning packets to our on-site preschool in Louisville is doing remote visits, Zoom meetings with visually impaired children. It's pretty awesome to see those meetings as our children with complex needs are just lighting up, hearing their friends speak and hearing their teachers speak. We also use Classroom Dojo, which is a little communication system that is used among our classroom teachers. And it's really been a huge learning opportunity for us, but it's been very positive at the end of the day.
So Kathy, help us better understand the children you are serving. Are they children who are in Kentucky's public preschools, or are they 3 and 4 year olds, no matter where they are?
So in Kentucky, we serve children birth to 5, and the birth to 3-year-olds are referred to as typically through the First Step system. If we receive the referral from a pediatric ophthalmologist or a pediatrician, today I spoke with a grandmother who referred her child, then our first step is to refer that child to First Steps. 75% of children with vision loss will have another diagnosis of special needs. So we use First Steps as our safety net. If we identify other areas of need, then we can tap into First Step services to meet those needs of the children. VIPS is one of very few centers in the entire nation that also serves 3 and 4 year olds in a preschool program that was designed specifically for children with vision loss. Our classrooms are inclusive, but our building is designed so that we have a change in surfaces. We have colors that serve as landmarks. We have a kids' town that has 8 different buildings with different exteriors so that we can start teaching travel skills very intentionally. We have people from all over the world who come to visit us each year to learn about our program and then to build on it to take back home. So those children do come from the public school system. We have a very positive collaboration with Jefferson County Public Schools that they send us their students in preschool who are blind or visually impaired with a very, I like to say, philanthropic viewpoint of why should we design our own preschool when we have VIPS right across the street. So it's a very, very positive arrangement. We have children who come from other school systems and from Fort Knox schools. So we contract with the Pentagon also to serve children.
That's great. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all for the background on your organizations. I think we're all, Pritchard Committee, of course, is a nonprofit as well. And I think it's, as we all responded to this pandemic around March 16th and started to think about what now, I think we all naturally went to rapid response. And as time has moved on, we're thinking almost in 3 prongs, I think. So rapid response, kind of what's beyond rapid response? How do we continue to serve our mission in the near term? And then long term, what are we learning about what's happening right now that we may continue to incorporate into the way we achieve our mission over the long term? So I think there's a visionary prong here because we all expect that there's likely a new normal on the horizon and we're testing it out at the moment. Mm-hmm. So with the idea of these 3 prongs, rapid response, near-term adjustments, and kind of visionary long-term, Mike, the Kentucky Science Center, kind of rapid response mode, how did you deal with that initially? And have you had to lay off staff, furlough staff? What are those real day-to-day needs?
Sure, I can walk you through from the time this starts. So just a little background. Timothy's been here 8 months. I've been CEO. I started on March 1st as CEO. So right as this hit. But I've been with the Kentucky Science Center for about 9 years. But my first week was really fun. And then all this started. And so it's been challenging for sure. So, we went right away, and we're very fortunate here at Kentucky Science Center. Dr. Sarah Moyer, who's the public health director here in Louisville, Jefferson County, is on our board. We also have representation from the mayor's office on our board. So right away, as soon as closure started, we were hearing what was going on, talking to national organizations, trying to understand what is happening, what should we be doing. We closed to the public right away, but we ran camps for our first responders, for nurses, for folks that were still working. So the building was closed to the public, but we had our 50,000 square feet of space open so we could distance the kids and really take care of them and meet the safety protocols. Within a couple of weeks, then it became everybody staying home, businesses are all shutting down. So we stopped doing those camps for the immediate term. At that point, all of our part-time people, our contract folks were laid off. So that was about 50 people. We were hoping to be reopened by the 1st of April or so. As that date became apparent, we weren't going to do that. We ended up furloughing about 2/3 of our full-time team. We were fortunate then. We did receive a PPP loan from the SBA, so part of the CARES Act. We received that at the end of April. We're able to bring the team back on. So, for the short term, we're getting through, we're planning to run camps this summer. We're hoping by the middle of June to have those, even if we're continue to use our facility Monday through Friday as camps only, and then use the weekends as a limited capacity for the public. We're still working through that and what that final plan looks like. It might be July before we open to the public. That would be my hope, that we're able to do that with limited capacity and all the things we need to do. I'm approaching this. I think we've got a next normal before we get to the new normal.
Yeah.
So I think, us as our DNA is we're hands-on, we're interactive, you're touching things, the tactile stimulation, that's who we are. And to get away from that changes what coming to the Science Center or us coming to you, it changes a lot of what we do. So a lot of what our team has been doing is looking at what loose parts do we have and what's the best way to clean them? Can we afford to have enough sets that we can rotate them in and out and be sure the cleaning protocols are there? And talking with, our colleagues around the country, that, we're fortunate Governor Beshear's done a great job and his approach to it. Other states have already opened up. And so we're talking to other science centers and find out, what are you all doing? What's working for you all? And what protocols are you putting in place? So, but I think honestly, until we get a vaccine, I think we're going to be in that next normal. And then in the new normal, I do think the virtual content for us, we've always run it's called Pulsive Surgery. It's an amazing program for middle and high school kids that it's live open heart surgery that they're viewing, and they're in the operating room and they're speaking with the doctor and the nurses as they're doing the surgery. It's such a cool program, but it's also career development, it's personal health. So there's a whole curriculum built around that. So we've always had that platform, but we never really pushed to say, okay, let's blow up virtual and see what we can do. So as soon as we closed, we started putting content out 3 times a week through our social media, through YouTube and other Facebook. But for free, just to have things for folks to do while they're at home. Right. Talking, we've surveyed our stakeholders, and the ones that are doing instruction at home are so overwhelmed with what they're trying to do with their kids anyway. We're not trying to add more to them. We're just trying to help, especially some of the younger ages that need stuff to do, that maybe it's a 15-minute screen time versus an hour-long screen time. Yeah. So, I think that will be part of I think that's going to be the next normal and the new normal. I think virtual will be a huge part of it.
But a great example, I think, Mike, of a community-based organization, again, kind of jumping in to help fill the gap and to support families and learners in line with your mission, which kind of, as I understood in the opening, is really this idea of instilling lifelong learning and deep curiosity. So you all are still trying to figure out how to do that, even though you had to respond with layoffs initially. The PPP is for 8 weeks.
Right.
On the other side of that 8 weeks, I like the way you framed it with the next normal and then the new normal on the horizon. I might steal that.
Please, I don't know that was my original thought, but I've been living it enough that I've owned it at this point. So,
and bring folks back on, bring employees back on, but you still don't know what the fall is going to look like.
Right, exactly. And for us, for the Science Center, fall is normally our slowest time as far as school-based, either us going to schools or field trips coming to us. Mm-hmm. For this new normal, the near normal, I think it goes through at least January. The field trips are not going to be happening. Hopefully the kids are actually in school if they're able to work that out. And we're able to go and deliver content at the schools themselves, so that mission is still there. We're working with a great partnership with KDLA, where we have traveling exhibits for free at different libraries around the Commonwealth. But we're hearing through at least January, they're not going to be open for us to have those for the Science and Play to Go exhibits back in there. So, we're still trying to figure out then how can we, are there ways, again, virtually, to deliver early childhood education content to those library sites and partner with them. So, and that's when when you look at silver linings and opportunities, the collaboration that's come together, and nonprofits are very near and dear to the heart. And when we all pull together, the Arts and Cultural Attractions group here in Louisville is amazing that everybody has pulled together, and we've produced free content, and we've collaborated and put together. It's not published yet, but it's an amazing booklet of here's 50 different organizations of content that's available. Here's the website. Here's the things they've done. That folks have pivoted and looking to still produce on a mission and deliver through on a mission. So
we'd love to help you get all that out, Mike.
Yeah.
Timothy, for United Way, the Bluegrass, kind of rapid response. This all hits. We realize it's going to stick for a while. How did United Way respond? Did you have to look at laying off staff? Are you looking at furloughing?
So fortunately, we looked at all of those scenarios just to see, what's the absolute necessities for the organization, and at the same time, how can we do the best that we can by all of our team members. Like Mike, fortunately, we were able to apply and receive PPP funding in April that allowed me to sort of avoid having to have that difficult conversation. As I mentioned, campaigns are coming in very slowly. At one point in time, people pledged to give money to an organization like United Way. And now what's going on, you may or may not be employed. You may or may not be making the same wages. We've had quite a few companies and people reach out to us about changing their pledges, because obviously they're not in a position now that they were several months ago. So what we did in terms of responding to the pandemic, as I mentioned, we partnered with our local community foundation. We launched a fund and invited them to partner with us so we can send a message, the same message we tell nonprofits. We want you to collaborate more and stop looking at competition, but look at collaboration. We decided to let our actions speak louder than our words. So together we came together and created a fund, which has done pretty well in terms of providing rapid response dollars for food, prescriptions, transportation, healthcare, basic needs services. Now we've been pivoting a little bit on providing things for rent utility assistance, because we know although people are not being evicted at the moment and people aren't being turned off right now, those bills will come due. And if you're not working, and if you haven't gotten your stimulus check or you haven't gotten your unemployment, we know that you're going to have some challenges ahead of you. So you were able
to kind of secure the employment at United Way and kind of that stopgap of the PPP. And from a rapid response standpoint, you're focusing to I guess a large degree on the rapid response needs of those in the community.
We are, but that's also at the expense of our usual work of sort of fundraising for United Way's work. We're giving out 100% of those dollars. So while we're doing what the community needs, the back of my mind, I'm also thinking that we have to make sure that we keep the lights on, we keep the people employed who are going to be here long term.
That's right. And as an executive, you have to be thinking 12 months, not just around the corner, but 12 months out, 18 months out, 24 months out. Yeah. Neil, how about the Carnegie Center? So smaller staff, I think, probably than the Kentucky Science Center and United Way, but still.
We have 16 staff members right now. And so it was one of those where and the thing is about the Carnegie Center, it's why I work there myself. It's one of the things about it is one of the greatest places to work. It's a beautiful building. The staff has always been really high quality people. And as the director, I've felt like my job is to sort of continue that. And so when it came to the point where do we lay people off, it was my highest goal to not lay anybody off, and fortunately was able to do that. Got the PPP loan in early May, actually. In fact, it hasn't been put in our bank yet, but we have the check. It's been, so our staff has pivoted fully online, and all of our writing programs, actually, where you're talking about adult writers, have been very successful. Mine, actually, I teach one writing class that doubled in size because we're online, and there's many people, older people in particular, who don't like to drive downtown and park and get in a building, who are able to come online. So that part has been a really good side of our work, is that we have learned that now and in the future, we'll want to continue teaching our writing classes online. But the biggest struggle I have, and the part that's really challenging my visionary abilities, is, what is it going to look like next year? And how do you take our mission and then really apply it to a whole different set of circumstances that are changing every week? You're talking about, like Mike and others, the going into schools, which is going to be a step that schools are going to have to make. I think for the first few months, they're probably going to say, everybody stay out of here, and we got to control our boundaries, and then they're going to start letting us back in. But meanwhile, again, we're all talking about, there's an urgency to education that I hope our government officials will be aware of and react to, because we are seeing in Lexington, for example, a zeroing out of the what's called extended social services to organizations like ours that reach in directly to impoverished communities and work on the front lines. And right now, because of the budget problems, they've zeroed that section out at the very moment when it's going to become quite necessary for our nonprofit community to be alive. So in addition to envisioning what things might be like, I have to envision that with a lot less money, and it's challenging. I've been fortunate to have been here for 9 years. I couldn't imagine falling into this kind of situation, but I've been able to, I know my budget down to the penny, and it's harder for newer people to know where are all the things, how is that money spent, where might there be a little extra here or there.
Right.
So we're trying to kind of reorganize that.
Yeah, and so Neil, I clearly hear you saying the Carnegie Center is part of your work has been stepping in to help close those equity gaps, to help provide better literacy supports for those in our community, underserved, historically underserved. And so without the resources, the dedicated certain resources to do that, it's going to be really hard for you to continue to do that work at a time when it is even more critically important.
That's basically it.
That's basically it. Yeah. So I think for those watching, it's so important to underscore that while each of you are turning on a dime to figure out the rapid response, keeping your staff secure so that they can respond to the needs of communities, and doing so with the PPP loan, that's an 8-week stopgap. And so, the extent to which Kentuckians will continue to give to your cause will make an incredible difference in your ability to plan for the summer and the fall months past these 8 weeks, and fill those important niches and gaps that need to be filled to keep our education progress moving forward, family progress moving forward. So Kathy, with visually impaired preschoolers, your rapid response in that moment.
Our rapid response was to begin the virtual home visits, and we do call them virtual home visits. Since we're not therapists, we don't like to use the term teletherapy. We started those before they were approved or reimbursed by the systems, by school systems, or by the First Step system. We knew that the important work had to go uninterrupted. So as our children were leaving our on-site preschool on March 13th, on Friday, they took home individualized learning packets, and we immediately started online classes the following week with the families, just to be checking in with them. At the same time, we jumped in and offered families virtual home visits through the First Steps system, those children we were seeing in their homes through First Steps and grants. And it took 3 weeks before First Steps was up and running to reimburse for that. So we took a pretty significant hit that way, but we also immediately started collecting data and connecting ourselves with some of our international partners who found themselves in the same boat, that we can now use that information that we've collected so that as we move into a new normal or the next normal, we see ourselves continuing to provide virtual home visits, not to replace face-to-face visits, because I hope that day never comes. But we know that a virtual format can enhance and expand those services that we are providing face-to-face. Those families who can only see once a month because the family lives so far away from one of our teachers out in the state, we could now see once a month, but then see them 2 more times in between. We've just partnered again with Cincinnati Children's Hospital to help them with a study of remote services as well for children with vision loss. So we know we have been able to jump on to this trend that was in place in early intervention, and to use our own local data so that we can continue with that service delivery model once the pandemic has passed.
Yeah.
I think our other big thing in order to be able to implement these new models is the changes that we've had to make in our fundraising area. Springtime is a very big fundraising season for visually impaired preschool services. We have 2 golf tournaments that are put on for us that had to be postponed. We are one of our biggest donors is the Crusade for Children, which has also been postponed. And then our big gala, which is our largest fundraiser annually, has now been moved to a virtual fundraiser. Those are really scary for us. We have saved a little money because conferences have been canceled. So we have saved travel and attendance fees, but having those big fundraisers be postponed or change will really impact us at the end of this fiscal year.
And so important just to underscore the importance of those early years of learning, and having the right people step in, support parents and early learners during that all important brain development time of 0 to 5. We don't get those years back. Our little ones don't get those years back, COVID or no COVID.
Right.
So this is important.
Yeah. It's very similar to what Neil was talking about too. We don't know what it's going to look like. This is new and for all of us, but in the world of education, in the world of early intervention, we can only predict what it's going to look like by what we know from children who never received services. But what's it going to mean to children who did receive and then lost services? And then how do we start up again? We know that the gap is going to be huge. And I'm not naive enough to think it's only in the world of early intervention. My family is a family of educators, and we're all concerned about what is it going to look like, not just next fall. I'm not sure we'll be back in school face-to-face next fall, but what's it going to look like in 3 years from now when these college students have missed this big gap and high schoolers have, and then our young children. I just think this is a new normal that's going to be changing and changing and changing for many years to come.
And we need nonprofits continually focused on helping families and learners and individuals continue to progress on their path. For a state that is still 5th from the bottom of the nation in poverty, this is there should be a great deal of urgency for us in finding ways to continue to push forward. So Kathy, I appreciate you sharing those. We do have a question from a listener about homelessness. So Timothy, I'm going to direct this to you. And the question is about whether or not United Way is seeing an uptick in homelessness now, and how you might be stepping in if you are.
Yeah, so our partners have seen not necessarily an uptick in homelessness, but it's much more difficult to serve the individuals who are experiencing homelessness because all those services are in person. You can't do that via computer or virtual. So making sure that our partners like the Hope Center and, Lexington Rescue Mission and others have the personal protective equipment necessary to be able to serve individuals, which we know is in short supply. as well as the cleaning and sanitary materials to make sure that they can keep their staff and their participants safe has been a challenge, because without that, they can't do their work effectively. So that's been a huge challenge. I think the distillery stepping in and being able to provide some help in sort of retooling what they normally make into a product that can help with cleaning has been a great help. But again, this is sort of just the first wave. I really think that the effects are yet to be seen in the areas of helping those who are experiencing homelessness.
And you all are hanging in there thinking about what's around the corner, the next normal, the new normal, and how to make sure we continue to get services to families.
Absolutely. If I could say one thing that Kathy, to follow up on what Kathy had mentioned earlier about the gaps that we're seeing, especially in education, we're also seeing our students gaps experiencing around access to food, which is an area we've been trying to help with, but something we're thinking about in the future as we move towards this virtual learning, this non-traditional instruction, is the technology gap. And we know that this is a need of a lot of our students don't have the hardware or the internet in order to keep up with their fellow students. So, how can we as nonprofits and members of philanthropy and just citizens in general who live in this region, how can we come together to make sure that we're giving our students the tools that they need in order to be able to step up and keep pace with their educational learnings? This is something that we've been thinking about and trying to think innovatively on how we can help support students, but these are issues that no one organization can do.
That's right.
Collectively.
We couldn't agree more, Timothy, on the issue of broadband being kind of the inequity of today in this environment, and needing our nation to respond to that inequity, ensure that low-income families and those in rural areas have access to broadband. We have a call to action on our website and a letter that we'll submit to Congress, and we'd be happy to have any of you as part of that letter calling for greater support for broadband. Because a new normal, the next normal and the new normal will include some level of remote learning, remote work, remote access to healthcare. So as we begin to kind of wrap up our hour together ahead of the governor's address at 5 o'clock, as you're thinking around that corner, you're thinking a year out, 18 months out, give us some hope on the horizon for your work and the people that you support, and how you think you'll continue to deliver your mission in a new normal. Kathy, maybe we'll start with you, since we've kind of ended with you on each question.
Well, I would like to think that, as I said earlier, that what we will take away from this VIP-centric is that we can serve families in different formats depending on the needs of the families or the abilities of the families. That we can do home visits, but we can also enhance and expand those services through virtual home visits. So that's kind of what I'm seeing will be our takeaway from this. I think also, along with the inequities with broadband, we also are taking away, and all of us, the inequities of healthcare for our marginalized community members. And I think that is something that will continue to haunt us or shadow the progress that we'll be making as a community at the end of the day with the pandemic.
So important, Kathy. Thank you for making sure that was part of our discussion as well. And I just want to underscore a bright spot that I think you shared earlier that's important, and we're hearing a bit of I think a common thread is what you shared about families really being part of that development of their preschoolers now in maybe a different way. And we're hearing even in a space and time when we are more disconnected than ever, we're seeing connections happen in a way that gives us all hope, I think.
Right.
And gives us something to hold on to for the future. And you shared that so nicely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Neil?
One of the things that makes me very hopeful is, one, the nonprofit community and our relationship with each other, and the fact that we do work together and we help each other, I think, and as you're saying, we're a big industry, if you want to call it that. So that gives me hope that there's really a power here in what we do. And the other thing that gives me hope is the families, the parents of the children that we work with. They have to go a long way and do a lot to make sure that their kids are educated, but they get it. They are going to be a big part of figuring out how they get the services for their children that we can offer. So what I've seen is that, for example, they're willing to go and sit in a parking lot, one person in one car and one person in another car, talking to each other or being on the phone with each other, just so that they do have some kind of physical closeness. And a parent will sit in that car with them, let them have that kind of connection. So I just see a lot of understanding among the parents that I have met that education is going to be a salvation for their kids. And so they're going to do what it takes to make sure they get a good one.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Mike?
Sure. You know, what I'm so optimistic is just the resiliency that I see in this community, in this state. I'm a lifelong Kentuckian, lived in Louisville my whole life. So very proud of who we are and what we are. And we have been through some tough times over the time I've been around, and we will get through this. You know, from our mission, being curious, we're all curious. And that's what's so exciting about it. It's, you know, even at my age, I see things, I'm like, how does that work? What makes that go? And so, you know, that lifelong learning, we will continue to encourage that and instill that. The delivery will be different. You know, right now, before this, we were 75% of our budget was earned income. So that was people paying admission to come in and to park and buy memberships. So, you know, how we continue that when you can't let people in the building, it's a bit of a challenge, but it's also opportunity to look at some of the programs that we offer, and maybe there's better ways to do them, or again, collaboration and partnership with others that make it much more effective. So, you know, we will get through it. It doesn't seem like it at times, but we're going to get there. So
Innovation and entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Timothy, hope on the horizon and how you're going to accomplish those opportunity centers.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that attracted my wife and I to moving to Kentucky, and as new Kentuckians, I continue to be immensely impressed with, is the philanthropic nature of the community and just the willingness to come together to help our fellow neighbor. I think that's going to provide us with the greatest sense of hope. Also, the fact that nonprofits are collaborating at a level that I haven't seen in any region I've worked in my entire career. I can't tell you how many calls, Zoom calls, GoToMeetings I'm on different days of the week with other clusters of nonprofit leaders all coming together, putting our heads together to source solutions and figuring out how we can leverage what each other is doing for greater impact. That's going to be the way forward. I think it's our greatest opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you each for joining us this afternoon to share your work, the successes and the challenges and the hope that's on the horizon. For those watching and who will be watching the archive version of this discussion, we hope that you'll make sure you provide a gift to the United Way of the Bluegrass, to visually impaired preschool services, to the Carnegie Center in Lexington, and to the Kentucky Science Center tomorrow during Kentucky Gives Day, to help keep the work moving forward and to be part of the work. So we're all in this together without a doubt, building a groundswell for a big, bold future for Kentucky. And we're thrilled to be in it with each and every one of you. Thank you so much and have a wonderful Monday evening.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
Thank you.